The moment Michael first stayed late at the office with his new boss, he had no idea he was about to become the main character in someone else's dangerous game. Behind closed doors, among midnight conversations and cautious touches, an intrigue was unfolding. One that could destroy not just a career, but the very fabric of their lives. And it all began with a single dinner and a chance encounter that would turn everything upside down. But before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing who's joined us. Now, get comfortable. We're about to start. Michael Carter had always considered himself a loyal and dedicated employee. With just over 30 years behind him, an athletic build, short dark hair, and a charming smile, he was popular among his colleagues. He wore tailored shirts that hinted at his strong frame, and his deep blue eyes had a calm intensity. But even he felt a small flutter of nerves when the new manager was introduced at the Monday morning briefing. Elizabeth Turner strode into the office with a quiet confidence that turned heads. She was in her mid-30s, tall and graceful, her wavy chestnut hair falling below her shoulders. Her bright green eyes observed the room attentively, and her lips formed a reserved smile. She wore a light grey business suit, a pencil skirt that accentuated her long legs, a crisp white blouse, and discreet beige lace lingerie beneath, barely noticeable unless one was looking for it. Elizabeth's figure was statuesque, her waist narrow, her chest modest, but beautifully shaped, her posture elegant. Even in heels, her movements were smooth and measured. As the team was introduced, Michael found himself watching Elizabeth. He noticed how she took in every face, nodded at every name, and offered a handshake that was firm but not overbearing. Other staff filled the room. Stephanie, the ever-energetic secretary in pastel sweaters. James, the chatty sales manager. Sarah from accounting, always with neat hair and practical shoes. Alex, the IT specialist in oversized hoodies. And Matt, the nervous new intern. It soon became clear that Elizabeth was not yet familiar with the company's complex reporting system. She moved through her first week with professionalism, but sometimes hesitated, double-checking numbers or searching for files on the office server. Michael offered to help whenever she seemed stuck. He noticed how her fingers, adorned with pale pink nails, hovered over the mouse just a moment too long, as if waiting for assurance. One evening, the sun already dipping below the tall office buildings, Michael lingered by the printer while Elizabeth attempted to decode a confusing expense spreadsheet. "Would you like a hand?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Elizabeth glanced up, a slight flush on her cheeks. "I would appreciate that, Michael. This reporting template is a bit different from what I'm used to." They moved to the conference table, spreadsheets and laptops spread before them. As they worked side by side, Michael found himself distracted by Elizabeth's presence. The scent of her subtle floral perfume, the soft fall of her hair as she bent over her laptop, the slight crease in her blouse that hinted at the lace below. Stephanie stopped by to wish them good night, giving Michael a meaningful look. And Matt peeked in, eyes wide, before hurrying away. Soon, only Michael and Elizabeth remained. the quiet of the empty office settling around them. Elizabeth sighed, pushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Thank you. I suppose I'm still getting used to how things are done here." "You're doing great," Michael assured her. He reached across to point out a hidden formula on her screen, and their hands brushed. The contact was fleeting, but electric. For a brief moment, Michael felt the warmth of Elizabeth's skin against his. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. A shared awareness, a subtle invitation. He noticed the delicate lace tracing the edge of her blouse as she leaned closer. The moment passed, and they returned to their work, though the air between them seemed charged. Eventually, the last report was finished, and Elizabeth leaned back, stretching her arms above her head. "I could not have managed this without you," she said with a genuine smile. "My pleasure," Michael replied. Elizabeth gathered her papers. Before leaving, she paused by Michael's desk. "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? We could talk more about the quarterly analysis, or anything, really." Michael hesitated only a moment. "I'd like that." Elizabeth's smile widened, the green in her eyes sparkling. "It is a date, then. I'll text you the address." As Michael watched her walk away, the sway of her skirt drawing his gaze, he felt anticipation rising. The possibilities of tomorrow glimmered before him. New opportunities, new connections, and perhaps something neither of them expected. He left the office that night with a spring in his step, the memory of her touch lingering in his mind. Michael spent the next day distracted. Numbers and emails blurred together, but his mind kept drifting back to Elizabeth's invitation. Her presence lingered in his thoughts. The subtle scent of her perfume, the softness in her voice, and the memory of their shared moment the night before. He even caught Stephanie smirking knowingly when she handed him the day's mail. As evening approached, Michael dressed with unusual care. He chose a navy shirt and a tailored blazer. Nothing too formal, but enough to feel confident. He checked the message Elizabeth had sent. A quiet residential address, not far from the office. There was a small note at the end. "No need to bring anything but your curiosity." The sun was setting as Michael arrived. The house was a 2-story, elegant but warm, with ivy climbing one wall and soft lights glowing in the windows. Michael paused at the door, his heart thudding a little faster than he expected, and rang the bell. Elizabeth opened the door herself, a vision entirely different from her office persona. She wore a dark blue dress, fitted at the waist and with an open neckline that revealed her delicate collarbones and the smooth line of her shoulders. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves, and her makeup was just enough to bring out the emerald of her eyes. She wore no jewelry, save for a slim silver bracelet on her wrist. "Michael," she said, her lips curving into a real unguarded smile. "Come in." The hallway was scented with candles, something floral and calming. Soft jazz played in the background, and the dining table was set for 2, with wine chilling in a bucket and a small arrangement of white lilies. Elizabeth led Michael inside, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. He noticed the subtle shimmer of her light lavender lingerie beneath her dress as she moved. A glimpse of lace when she turned, the fabric hugging her hips and thighs. Her figure was as striking as ever. Tall, slender, her waist narrow, and her movements graceful. They sat and talked as Elizabeth finished up the last touches in the kitchen. The meal was simple but delicious. Fresh salad, roasted chicken, and tiny chocolate desserts. Conversation flowed easily. Elizabeth was warmer, more open than she had been in the office. She spoke about her move, her former city, and her love for the ocean. Michael found himself sharing things he rarely did, encouraged by her genuine interest in her. As they laughed together, Michael noticed how Elizabeth sometimes touched his hand when making a point, or leaned a little closer when she laughed. The space between them felt charged with something new. After dessert, Elizabeth suggested they move to the living room. She switched off the main lights, leaving only the glow of candles and the city outside the windows. Michael sat beside her on the couch, the air thick with anticipation. Elizabeth tucked her legs beneath her, the slit in her dress falling open just enough to reveal her smooth thigh and a hint of the lavender lace of her panties. She glanced at Michael, her gaze lingering on his lips before meeting his eyes. "You know," she said softly, "I do not usually invite colleagues to my home. I hope you do not mind that this evening is not only about quarterly reports." Michael smiled, feeling his nerves fade away under her gaze. "I was hoping it would be more than that." Elizabeth's lips curved. She reached over and took his hand, her fingers warm and soft. She guided it gently onto her thigh, letting him feel the warmth of her skin beneath the silk. The air between them seemed to hum. Michael ran his thumb gently along the lace edge of her panties, feeling her shiver under his touch. Elizabeth leaned in, brushing her lips softly against his. The kiss was tentative at first, gentle and questioning, but quickly deepened. Her hand slid up the front of his shirt, unbuttoning it with practiced ease, as his other hand caressed her waist, tracing the curve of her body. Elizabeth drew back just enough to pull Michael closer, her body fitting against his. Her dress slipped from one shoulder, baring more of her skin and the delicate strap of her lavender bra. She pressed herself against him, the warmth of her body clear even through their clothes. Michael kissed her neck, tasting her skin, while Elizabeth's hands found his hair, holding him gently in place. They paused, breathless, looking into each other's eyes. "I have not done this for a long time," Elizabeth whispered. There was vulnerability in her voice. Michael brushed her hair back. "Me neither." They laughed softly, breaking the tension, then kissed again, slower this time, savoring every moment. Elizabeth slid onto Michael's lap, her dress falling higher on her thighs. He felt the gentle curve of her hips, the firmness of her body. Their kisses grew longer, more insistent, hands wandering with growing confidence, but always tender. Michael explored the line of her back, the smoothness of her skin, the warmth where her body met his. For a moment, the world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the glow of candlelight and the shared heartbeat between them. They parted slowly, smiling and a little shy now. Elizabeth adjusted her dress and poured more wine. So, will you help me with those reports tomorrow too? Michael grinned. Every single one. They returned to the table, finishing their wine and talking well into the night. About the future, about ambition, and about chances worth taking. As Michael left later, Elizabeth walked him to the door, her dress back in place, her eyes shining. She kissed him softly, a promise for next time. Outside, the world seemed brighter, possibilities stretching out ahead. Michael walked to his car, unable to stop smiling, the memory of her touch and the scent of her hair lingering with him. And somewhere, in the quiet house, Elizabeth watched from the window, her fingers lingering on her lips, already thinking of tomorrow. The week after Michael's evening with Elizabeth felt surreal, almost as if he were drifting through someone else's life. Their connection, forged in candlelight and whispers, lingered in his mind. At the office, Elizabeth maintained her professionalism, though her eyes lingered on Michael just a bit longer than before. Sometimes her hand brushed his when she handed him a folder, or her lips curved in a smile meant only for him. Yet they were careful. There were always eyes. The office, usually abuzz with routine chatter, grew thick with speculation. Stephanie was the first to notice that Michael and Elizabeth seemed closer. Her glances filled with curiosity. James began making teasing remarks about late-night reports. Sarah, always observant, quietly watched the shifting dynamics. Even Matt, the intern, looked uncertain, unsure whether to say something or not. It was a small world, and secrets were difficult to keep. Midweek, a new ripple of tension swept through the team. Late that Wednesday morning, the glass doors swung open and a tall man entered, carrying himself with a confidence that seemed to command the entire floor. His name was Jason. At first, Michael did not know who he was. Jason was broad-shouldered, perhaps in his early 30s, with sun-kissed skin, sandy hair, and sharp blue eyes. His suit was impeccably tailored, and he carried an athletic duffel bag in one hand, as if he had just come from a gym. Elizabeth's reaction was immediate. Her posture stiffened, her face carefully controlled. "Jason," she said, her voice cordial but distant. "Elizabeth," Jason replied, his eyes lingering on her, then shifting to Michael. There was a moment, taut with unspoken history. Michael felt the eyes of the entire office upon them. "Just here for a signature," Jason said, holding up a folder. "I will not interrupt." Elizabeth took the folder, scanning the document inside, her fingers tense around the pen. Michael could not help but notice the flicker of emotion across her face. Annoyance, perhaps, or something deeper. He saw now the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the ones hidden by makeup and self-control. Jason's gaze turned to Michael, who offered a polite nod. "You must be Michael," Jason said, his tone light, but edged with something sharper. Michael stood, straightening his shirt. "That's right." There was a beat of silence. Stephanie, sensing the storm, hurried to the copier. James vanished to the break room. The office held its collective breath. Elizabeth signed the papers and handed them back, her fingers not quite touching Jason's. "Thank you," You can see yourself out. Jason grinned, a flash of white teeth. Always a pleasure. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing at Michael. Take good care of her. She works too hard, you know. With that, he left, the door shutting behind him. The tension in the air remained, even after Jason's departure. Michael watched as Elizabeth composed herself, smoothing her skirt, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Is everything all right? He asked quietly, when they were alone in the copy room. Elizabeth hesitated, then managed a tight smile. Just someone from my past. Nothing more. But the look in her eyes told Michael it was not so simple. That evening, Elizabeth sent Michael a short, cryptic text. Can you come by tonight? I would appreciate your company. Michael did not hesitate. He arrived at her home after dark, the city lights glinting off wet pavement. Elizabeth welcomed him in, her hair loose and damp from the shower, wearing a simple cream-colored blouse and soft blue lounge pants. Beneath the blouse, Michael could just see the outline of delicate beige lace, matching the color of her skin. Her body, so familiar now, was even more alluring in this relaxed setting. Her curves subtle, her frame slender, her presence vulnerable. They sat together in the living room, the quiet broken only by the occasional sound of cars outside. I did not expect to see Jason again, Elizabeth confessed, her voice low. He is persistent. Our divorce was not easy. Michael nodded, placing a comforting hand over hers. Do you want to talk about it? Elizabeth shook her head. Not tonight. I just want to forget. They sat in silence for a while. Then, as if drawn by gravity, Elizabeth leaned into Michael, her head resting on his shoulder. Michael stroked her hair gently, letting her lean on him. He pressed his lips to her temple, then to her cheek, savoring the softness of her skin. Elizabeth turned, her eyes shining in the dim light, and kissed him, slowly, deeply, as if searching for reassurance. Their bodies pressed close, her blouse slipping from one shoulder, revealing the strap of her lace bra. Michael's hand slid down her back, tracing the curve of her spine. Elizabeth's fingers unbuttoned his shirt, exploring the warmth of his chest. They moved together, not with urgency, but with a need to lose themselves in each other. Michael's lips found the hollow of her throat, and Elizabeth shivered, her breath catching. Her body trembled as Michael's hands found her waist, pulling her gently closer. They lay side by side, exchanging kisses, touches, and soft words. The intimacy between them was a balm, a way to drown out the memories of pain. Afterwards, Elizabeth curled against him, her breathing slow and even. I feel safe with you, she whispered, almost too quietly for him to hear. Michael squeezed her hand. I'm here. The night passed peacefully, but morning brought a new shock. As Michael prepared to leave, he noticed a car parked across the street. Jason was behind the wheel, watching the house. Michael met his eyes through the glass, feeling a cold chill run down his spine. There was a challenge in Jason's stare, something dangerous and unresolved. Michael stepped outside, walking deliberately past the car. Jason rolled down the window, his expression unreadable. "Early morning," Jason remarked. Michael nodded. "Just heading home." Jason's gaze lingered. "Elizabeth likes to move on quickly, does she not?" Michael ignored the provocation and kept walking. He could feel Jason's eyes on him until he turned the corner. Back at work, the atmosphere grew tense. James and Stephanie were abuzz with rumors, and even Sarah, usually withdrawn, asked Michael if everything was all right. Elizabeth acted as if nothing had happened, but Michael saw the strain beneath her calm exterior. The easy camaraderie they had shared was now edged with secrecy and fear. For the first time, Michael realized how high the stakes were. His involvement with Elizabeth was no longer a private adventure. It had become a public story, with characters and consequences beyond his control. That night, Michael received an anonymous message. "Watch yourself. Some things are better left alone." The shock of it left him awake long into the night. But the memory of Elizabeth's embrace gave him strength. He knew he could not walk away now, even if it meant risking everything. Elizabeth's world seemed to narrow in the days after Jason's reappearance. Her poise at the office became more pronounced. But Michael saw the subtle changes. How she now locked her office door. How she left her phone face down. How she glanced at her email with furrowed brows, as if searching for hidden threats. Michael longed to ask what haunted her. But each time he tried, she only smiled that composed, distant smile, then steered the conversation back to work. Their secret, once a source of excitement, now carried a weight. Yet, their connection deepened in these shadowed days. There was a trust growing between them, a silent promise, forged in adversity and vulnerability. Michael tried to shield Elizabeth from office gossip, intercepting questions and gently deterring the more persistent staff from prying. He took on extra work so she could leave early. Sometimes, Elizabeth would send him a grateful glance, a silent thank you across the bustling office. On Thursday, a new tension entered the scene. One both unexpected and alluring. Human Resources welcomed a new staff member, Catherine, a transfer from another branch. She was striking in her own right. A petite, confident woman in her late 20s, with honey blonde hair falling in loose waves, an angular face and lively blue eyes. Her first day she wore a fitted red blouse tucked into a pencil skirt, her movements purposeful and self-assured. When she leaned to pick up her ID badge, Michael glimpsed a hint of bold red lace beneath her blouse, a sharp contrast to her understated office attire. Catherine made an impression quickly. She brought homemade cookies for the break room, remembered everyone's names by noon, and had a quick, bright laugh that carried down the hall. But she took a particular interest in Michael. Whenever she passed his desk, her eyes lingered just a second too long. She joined him for coffee, her conversation always walking the fine line between innocent and teasing. Michael felt both flattered and wary. The memory of Elizabeth's embrace was still warm in his mind, but the uncertainty about her feelings and the constant strain of secrecy made him vulnerable to Catherine's charm. One afternoon, Michael stayed late, poring over a quarterly report that Elizabeth had asked him to finalize. The office was nearly empty. Catherine appeared at his side, balancing a cup of tea and a folder. She perched on the corner of his desk, crossing her legs so her skirt slid higher, revealing toned calves and the glimmer of red silk lining. "Burning the midnight oil," she teased, offering him the cup. "Something like that," Michael replied, forcing a smile. Catherine leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You and Elizabeth seem close. Is she as hard to please as she looks?" Michael blinked, caught off guard. "She is just driven." Catherine grinned. "Driven, yes. Mysterious, too. I hear her ex-husband is a handful." Michael stiffened. "We do not talk about him." Catherine studied his face for a moment, then let the subject drop. She reached into her folder, pulling out a small slip of paper. "I found this in the copier. Thought it looked important." She handed it over. It was a list of meeting times, all coded and anonymous. Nothing incriminating, but enough to suggest secret dealings. After Catherine left, Michael reread the list, a cold suspicion prickling his skin. Was someone setting Elizabeth up? Or was Elizabeth hiding something from him? That night, he went to Elizabeth's house with the slip of paper in his pocket. The air was cool, the city strangely quiet. Elizabeth opened the door in a silky navy robe that brushed her knees. Her hair loosely pinned up, a few strands curling over her cheek. Her body looked more delicate than ever, her waist narrow beneath the robe, her legs long and bare, and the faint outline of midnight blue lingerie underneath. They stood together in her kitchen, the smell of tea and cinnamon filling the air. Michael handed her the paper, watching her face as she read. For the briefest second, something like fear flickered in her eyes. "Do you know what this means?" he asked gently. Elizabeth hesitated, then folded the slip carefully and set it aside. "I do," she said softly. "But not here. Not now." She stepped closer, seeking comfort in his arms. Michael wrapped her in a gentle embrace. He could feel her body trembling slightly against his. He pressed his lips to her forehead, then traced a slow line down to her lips. Their kiss was sweet, hesitant, as if both needed reassurance. Elizabeth let her robe fall open a little, her midnight blue lingerie catching the low kitchen light. Michael ran his fingers along her shoulders, feeling the delicate straps and the warmth of her skin. She pulled him closer, her hands finding his back, and together they stood in the hush, letting their shared breath steady them both. They moved into the living room, Elizabeth curling up beside Michael on the sofa. For a while they talked about ordinary things. Favorite childhood books, songs that made them cry, hopes for the future. The tension between them eased, replaced by a quiet intimacy. Outside, the city glowed in the night, far away from the secrets and doubts that shadowed their days. Later, as Michael left, Elizabeth pressed her lips to his cheek and whispered, "I trust you, Michael, even if I do not always show it." The next morning, Catherine cornered Michael by the elevator, her blue eyes dancing. "You have not tried my cookies," she chided, handing him a tin wrapped in red ribbon. He accepted, careful not to encourage her too much. But as he bit into the cookie at his desk, he found a small note folded inside the tin. Some people are not who they pretend to be. Be careful. Michael's mind raced with questions. Was Catherine warning him about Elizabeth? Or was she warning him about herself? That day, he noticed Elizabeth whispering quietly with Alex from IT, her expression serious. When he approached, both of them fell silent, Alex quickly making his excuses and leaving. Michael waited until they were alone. "Is there something you want to tell me?" he asked. Elizabeth smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Soon," she promised. "But not yet." That evening, Michael found himself alone in the office, finishing up work. Catherine appeared again, this time wearing a fitted cream dress and matching red lace lingerie, the strap visible when she leaned over his desk. She sat across from him, crossing her legs, her skirt riding high. "You seem tense," she said softly. "Do you want to talk about it?" Michael shook his head. "I am just tired." Catherine tilted her head, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "You know, you do not have to carry everything yourself. Sometimes it is good to let someone else in." She stood and, for a moment, rested her hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and gentle. "I'm here if you need me," she whispered, then walked away, leaving the faintest trace of her perfume in the air. Michael watched her go, his heart and mind tangled. The boundaries between trust and suspicion, between comfort and desire, seemed thinner every day. He was caught between two women, one whose secrets ran deep, another whose intentions remained unclear. That night, lying awake, Michael tried to piece together the puzzle. The cryptic list, Catherine's note, Alex's involvement, Elizabeth's whispered promise. The mystery pressed in on all sides, but one thing was certain. His feelings for Elizabeth were real, and he would do anything to protect her. The next morning, as he entered the office, Michael found a single envelope on his desk, sealed in red wax. Inside was a short message, written in careful script. "Some secrets are meant to be shared. Meet me on the rooftop at midnight." He read the note twice, his heart pounding. The mystery had deepened, and Michael knew that the answers, whatever they were, would change everything. The city was restless with midnight traffic. A quiet hush, broken by distant sirens and the steady hum of lights below. Michael found himself staring at the note, the red wax seal broken in his hands. Rooftop at midnight. He slipped out of the office long after everyone else had left. The halls empty and the elevator humming its lonely tune as it carried him up. The rooftop was cold, wind whipping at his hair and tugging at his jacket. He stepped into the pale glow of the city, heart pounding. For a moment, he wondered if anyone would come. Then the door creaked open, and Elizabeth appeared, her silhouette framed by the city lights. She wore a charcoal grey trench coat, her hair loose and tumbling over her shoulders, eyes bright and wary. Beneath the coat, Michael glimpsed a fitted black dress, the delicate edge of lace at her neckline. She crossed the rooftop quickly, arms wrapped around herself. "You got my note," she said, her breath visible in the night air. Michael nodded. "I came. You said some secrets were meant to be shared." Elizabeth hesitated, searching his face. For the first time, Michael saw the depth of her vulnerability, the cracks in her careful composure. "There are things you do not know," she said softly. "About Jason, about me. I tried to keep you safe, but maybe I only made things worse." She turned, facing the lights. "Jason is not just my ex-husband. He is still trying to control parts of my life. I thought the divorce would end it, but he found ways to linger. The meetings on that list, they are times he pressured me to come to arrangements, threats disguised as negotiations. I could not involve anyone from work, not even you." Michael stepped closer, wanting to reach for her, but holding back. "Why did you not tell me?" Elizabeth's shoulders trembled. "Because you are the only good thing I have found since moving here. I did not want you hurt." A new voice broke the silence. "So this is where the party is." They turned. Catherine stepped out of the stairwell, her cream coat tightly belted over her slim frame, honey blonde hair blowing in the wind. Her lips were set in a determined line, blue eyes bright with something fierce. "I told you some people are not who they pretend to be," Catherine said, looking from Michael to Elizabeth. "I did not mean you, Michael." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Jason contacted me my first day. He said you were unstable, that you would ruin the department. He asked me to report on you, to help him get you fired if you made trouble. But I do not like bullies." She held out her phone, showing a series of messages. Jason's name at the top, the words clear: threats, accusations, and promises of favors. Michael's anger boiled. So all the whispers, all the warnings, that was Jason? Catherine nodded. "He tried to play us all against each other. He is finished now. I have sent the messages to HR and the police. You are free, Elizabeth, if you want it." The rooftop was silent except for the city's heartbeat. Elizabeth covered her face with her hands, relief breaking through her composure. Michael stepped forward and gently drew her into his arms. There, under the wide starlit sky, he held her close. Elizabeth's body trembled against him, her tears soaking his shirt. He kissed her hair, her forehead, her cheeks, the delicate curve of her jaw. She pressed her lips to his, their kiss slow and deep, a promise of safety and hope. Michael wrapped his arms around her waist, feeling her body relax, the fear draining away. Elizabeth leaned into him, her black dress slipping at the shoulder, the strap of her lace bra visible in the city light. She traced Michael's cheek with her fingertips, her touch gentle and lingering. He kissed her again, hands warm against her back, the night air swirling around them. For a long moment, they were alone in the world, bound by trust, desire, and a newfound freedom. When they parted, Elizabeth looked at Catherine, gratitude and apology in her eyes. "Thank you for your honesty." Catherine shrugged, a small smile breaking through. "No one deserves to be afraid at work. Besides, I prefer to make my own friends." She turned to Michael, her gaze softening. Take care of her and yourself. With a final nod, Catherine slipped back into the stairwell, the door clicking softly behind her. Elizabeth exhaled, the last of her tension gone. She leaned her head against Michael's shoulder, closing her eyes. I do not want to hide anymore, she whispered. From anyone. Not from you, not from Jason, not from myself. Michael squeezed her hand. You do not have to. They left the rooftop together, descending back into the sleeping office. The city was still alive outside, but inside everything was quiet, peaceful at last. In the weeks that followed, the changes were subtle but profound. Jason was banned from company property, his threats documented and reported. Catherine settled into her role, her cheerful spirit a welcome presence. Office gossip shifted. Elizabeth and Michael no longer had to hide their closeness, though they kept their private moments discreet. Stephanie started a betting pool on when they would make things official. Even James stopped making jokes, instead offering real respect. Elizabeth flourished, her confidence growing daily. She dressed as she liked, sometimes in tailored suits, sometimes in soft sweaters, sometimes in dresses that made Michael's heart race. Her beauty was undeniable, tall, elegant, her chestnut hair shining, her green eyes bright. She smiled more often, especially when Michael was near. Their evenings together became a ritual. Sometimes they cooked. Sometimes they took long walks through the city. Sometimes they simply curled up together, sharing secrets and dreams. One night, as rain pattered against the windows, Michael traced his fingers over the curve of Elizabeth's waist. She wore pale pink lingerie, delicate and sheer, her skin soft beneath his touch. Their lovemaking was slow and tender, each caress a wordless promise. Elizabeth arched against him, her laughter bright and free. Michael kissed every inch of her, memorizing the lines of her body, the taste of her lips, the warmth of her embrace. In the quiet afterwards, they lay tangled together, safe and unafraid. As spring arrived, Michael was promoted. Elizabeth's trust in him was total, both as a colleague and as a partner. The past had lost its hold, and a simple, shining future stretched out before them, uncomplicated, but rich with hope. There was no dramatic farewell to the shadows, only a quiet morning, sunlight on their faces, the world wide open before them.